Buongiorno. Where do you think I'm going with this? Italy. Italy is my country of choice because I was born there. I was born in Vicenza, Italy. My dad was in the service. He was stationed at Caserma, Italy. Caserma means barracks in Italian. And I always talk to my mom about going back one day, seeing where we went, where she took me when I was a baby, the pictures, and standing on St. Mark's Square, when nobody else was around except pigeons, and that wasn't so this time. It finally happened. We all went, my mom, my dad, and my sister. We got to go over, we flew into Rome. That's where we picked up my sister. She lived in Germany at the time. And if you've ever driven in Rome, in a traffic circle, then you are a seasoned driver. That place is amazing. We stayed at the Hotel Navona, right off Navona Square. I think I'm saying that correctly. The first night we did the Spanish Steps. You're no longer allowed to sit on those, but we got to kind of hang out there for a while. We did the Pantheon. We just got to enjoy even like the nighttime life, which is like the street music. And it's just beautiful. If you've ever listened to this, there are groups all over that kind of set up wherever, and they're trying to sell you their music, and they're singing, and the music just wafts up. It's just the acoustics in these alleyways are just gorgeous. It just pulls you in. So yeah, we just kind of stood around and enjoyed everybody singing and dancing, and did that. We also went to visit Tuscany. Tuscany is one of my favorite places. I'd love to go there and do some of these food tours, which we were fortunate enough to do a cooking class. It was awesome. This place we hung out with Nona, which was grandma, and that's who I am now to my grandchildren, because I loved it. So we hung out with Nona and her granddaughter, her granddaughter-in-law. We made pasta, beef stew, mashed potatoes, and of course tiramisu. It was amazing. We sat out on their terrace under this beautiful arbor of the grapes, and you kind of looked out behind you, and it was just where you think you would be in Tuscany, As a matter of fact, the first morning we woke up in Tuscany, my family and I, we still laugh because, and I can show you a picture, we opened up those shutters, and you just felt like you could hear the birds sing, like, ah, and out there it was real, it wasn't a picture, just amazing. One of the next days we went to Siena. It's a hilltop town. A lot of those exist there. They did that on the hilltops to keep them safe. In this area there was the Palladio. It's actually where they had horse races at one time, and the entire piazza is kind of canted in. It helped the horses, not to kind of take off into the crowd as much. They would bring in like earth or sand, and they would lay that down, also to help absorb blood. But we got to go see where that was, and they still hold those twice a year if you want to go see them. And then the fun thing was, we came down off that hill walking, so happy to see the bus waiting for us. We got on that bus, we rode all the way down to the parking lot, and then as we were getting off, we decided to ask, so are you going to be taking us the rest of the way down to our car, or where we're at? And no, this is the tour for blah, blah, blah. Are you part of this tour? We rode around with them on their tour, well, just down the mountain, but they were gracious enough then to drive us the rest of the way to our car. So that made excellent time. So that was a large part of our tour in Italy, and so I'd be glad to tell you more if you want.
Okay, so I decided to go a little bit of a different way with mine, and I decided to talk about one of my kind of funnest experiences I had when I was traveling. So, as you've kind of heard earlier, I did my first group tour. I was 22, so just a baby, first time out of the country ever, and I decided to do a 30-day trip of Europe. So, 8 countries, I think like 14 cities. It was an absolute whirlwind, and I could probably talk for 2 hours about that trip, because it was me, 4 other Americans, 2 Japanese, and then about 30 Australians, all 18 to 27. So it was definitely interesting, we'll say that. But my favorite day was our third or fourth day of the trip, and we were in San Sebastian, Spain. I'd never been out of the country, I'd never been to Spain, and it was also in the off season, so it was January, February, so we were there probably end of January in this teeny little coastal town of San Sebastian, Spain. It was a beautiful town. It was kind of overcast during the day. It was a little rainy, so we're like, oh man, what are we gonna do? We can't go to the beach. Well, our tour director was like, you're actually in luck, because today is San Sebastian Day. And so we were like, oh, it's like their Independence Day, there's gonna be fireworks, there's gonna be parades. It was not like that at all. We were not in the US, we were in Spain. But a really interesting piece of history, now I don't remember all of it exactly, but you know, the Spanish and the French, they fought for a long time. Territory changed hands many, many, many times over the years. And so there's a lot of fun stories that came out of that. Well, San Sebastian, small town, mostly bakers, mostly farmers, Spaniards. One day they were taken over by the French. The French were pretty nice, but they weren't really that great. But they didn't want to just completely wipe the town off the map, but they didn't really like the Spaniards. So the armies would do their drills and they would beat their drums all day long, all night long, keep the people awake. The people hated it. They were so upset. They were just over it. So the bakers, because you know, who is up in the morning for everybody else? It's the bakers. You know, they're up before, they're up in the sunrise. The bakers started doing the same thing with their pots and pans. So they would, in the mornings, they would walk through the streets, banging their pots and pans to annoy the soldiers that had been drinking all night, you know. The opposite, the soldiers were up drinking all of the Spaniards' wine. So the bakers were like, fine, we can't fight you, but we will annoy you to no end. So now, eventually, you know, war broke out, the Spaniards took back over, you know, and they have San Sebastian, Spain. But every year now, in like January, that day that we were in Spain, they have this huge festival. The whole town turns out, but it really doesn't start till the evening. And all the people dress up. A lot of the just normal village people dress up in like traditional bakers. You know, they've got their aprons, they've got this, and they just walk through the streets, still banging pots and pans, walking through the streets. And then all of the marching bands in the area dress up, and they wear their marching band uniforms, and they walk through the streets as well. And it's a competition to see who can be louder, because the marching bands is the armies, the French, the Spaniards are the villagers, and they do this whole party, and those parades walk all the way through the city, and then it all kind of comes to a head at midnight, and the biggest party you've ever seen, at midnight in the town square. It was so busy, they were serving sangria out the windows, because you couldn't get into the bars, because there were so many people. So the best day I ever had in Spain was that. Best sangria out of a window, too.
Okay, well, what I decided to do today was to tell you about my journey towards wanting to become a tour director. So, in 2018, my mom had just passed, and my dad and him, my mom and dad would go traveling quite a bit. And so they had planned this where they wanted to go on this trip, a bus tour to Yellowstone. Well, my dad still wanted to go after my mom had passed. And so I was like, Dad, let me go with you. It was literally 6 weeks after she had passed. I was like, I want to go with you. Let me go with you. I didn't want him to go by himself. So we went on this bus tour. And, you know, I was warned it's going to be, you know, the gray hair tour or whatever. Lots of old people, you know. And I was one of the younger people. I have to admit, it was a lot of older people. But we went on this tour, and you know, we drove a lot on the bus. We drove from St. Charles, Missouri, and we spent days just driving all the way through. We went through like 10 states, but we went to South Dakota, where we saw Mount Rushmore. Our final destination was really Yellowstone. But I saw all kinds of things in that part of the country that I never even knew I wanted to see before, okay? I just was going to be with my dad, okay? And I was just like in awe of everything that I saw, and I didn't have to plan anything. Like, it was all planned for me. And that's how my husband and I like to travel. We've done a couple of cruises because we liked that aspect. You have 2-3 choices, and you know, you're like, okay, I'll do this one. And rather than just having the whole world open up to you, and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do. So I came home and I told my husband, I was like, that tour was amazing, okay? I loved it. The bus ride was enjoyable. Everything that I saw was stuff I didn't even know I wanted to see, and it was just really cool. Plus, I had time with my dad to really get to know him because he's always been a really reserved guy, and so we got to spend. It was great. It's a treasured memory that I'll always remember. That was my first time being on a tour. So fast forward in 2020, it was that summer was going to be my husband and I's 25th wedding anniversary, and I was like, I want to go on a trip. And so my dad was helping me figure things out. He was showing me all these different tours, that kind of things that you can do, and I was like, this is for us. This is what we want to do. Well, we ended up getting this, which I didn't know at the time, and I learned yesterday, it was a hub and spoke itinerary where we went to London and we got to go to Canterbury and to Stratford-upon-Avon and to the Roman Baths and to Stonehenge and things like that, and I loved it. And while we were on that tour, that didn't happen in 2020, by the way. That got pushed off 2 years. We didn't go until 2022. Unfortunately, we scheduled it in January of 2020, and it got canceled that year, obviously. Got canceled the next year, so we went in 2022. Unfortunately, my dad passed in 2020, and he paid for almost the entire trip because he wanted me to go on this so badly. But anyway, while we were there, in particular when we were at Canterbury means something to me. I have my Canterbury cross on today, dipped in the holy water at Canterbury Cathedral. It's important to me because I teach medieval literature. I taught medieval literature, I should say, and Canterbury Tales was one of the things that I taught. And so, anyway, on that tour, when we were going to Canterbury, I was kind of telling the people around on the bus the story behind the Canterbury Cathedral and why it's important and stuff like that. And my husband afterwards, a lot of the people said, "Thank you for sharing that. That was really interesting. That was really good." And my husband turned to me and he said, "You could totally do this job." And I was like, "That would be fun, wouldn't it?" And, but I was still very much into teaching. And I said, I wasn't at Canterbury long enough for me. And I said, I'm going to bring my students back here one day. So this was 2022. So that fall, I approached my administration. I said, I want to take kids on this trip. And they were like, go for it. So I called EF. I got this whole thing set up, and I presented it, and I had 41 students sign up. Okay, there were even people I had to turn away because I'm like, I'm not taking more than a bus full. And it was great. So, but by the time we went, it was down to 36, and it had 6 chaperones. I got to go on a training tour in Rome last summer to learn how to be a group leader. And I learned a lot, okay? Because a group leader it's not a tour director, but a group leader for EF is, I'm in charge of all of the passengers as far as I set the rooming. I'm the one who's, they're teenagers from 16 to 18, so, we're checking on them, and I'm in charge of the chaperones and making sure that they know what they need to do. No tour director was with us on the flights. I was in charge of everything at the airport and so I have a little bit of experience doing that kind of stuff. I loved every minute of that trip, and then when we actually went on the trip in June, I loved every minute of it, and I was really talking to the tour director and the tour guides, and I'm like, I'm really thinking about doing this, and I had talked to you right before I went to Daniel because I was interested in pursuing this, and knowing that my teaching career, I was ready for it to come to an end after 30 years, and I said, let me go on this trip and make sure I want to do it before I commit to going to this class. So I went, I talked a lot to the tour director, and I was like, I really just think this is what I want to do. And I hesitated a little bit to actually decide to join the class, but I was like, I think I need to do this. And my husband was all on board. He's like, I want you to do this. I think you would be good at doing this. And you know what? Yes, it costs some money, but let's see. This could be a dream for you. I mean, I loved my career before, but this is my new dream. I want to travel and share with people. Have I gone over my 3 minutes? Okay. All right.
How I came into the tour director, the training, and the reason why. So 2020, let's see, 2021, basically, my director of product development decided to step down in position. So this opportunity came arise for me. I was offered the position. As product operations managers, it's a little bit different. You do all the paperwork, but as a product manager, product development manager, you kind of like do site inspections, you go travel, and you do the hard part of planning. That's fun if you love logistics, if you like not just travel, but just the component of the program. So in 2022, I basically decided to do one of these inspections, joined one of our group to Greece. It was my first time in Greece, loved it, loved every moment of it. But being part of the group, this is 2022 and we're just barely coming to after COVID, and testing is still basically on the rise. Like they have to test you before you fly out back to the United States. So I joined in, arrived there, met the group, met my tour director for the first time, basically, and kind of just observe what he does, and also our group, fun group. You know, one thing I love about this industry, especially in group tours, traveling with seniors. Oh my God, they are such a ball to travel with. They're just let loose. They will drink, they will give you food. They're just fun to travel with. So in Greece, the logistic of that is very difficult for the tour directors. Mainly not because of the riding the bus, but getting into the ferry from Athens to Santorini to Mykonos, because you have to hold your luggage. And seniors, basically, you know, they're older, they can't really hold their luggage, but there's no porterage. So you see all these complaints. They get to, I forgot what's the name of the Piraeus, I believe that's the port. Early in the morning, 4 o'clock, nobody's like in a good mood. You see them at the lobby, they're like, why do we have to leave this early? Why? Well, because the ferry leaves at 7. It's a 5-hour journey, and basically you have to get there. So you see all them. Once they actually settled in the ferry, they all come down, they have their coffee, some of them take a nap, some of them walk around. It's fun to just observe and watch them, their behavior. So one thing about the tour directors that we have, he didn't do a lot of commentary. So he relied on the local guides. So for me, it's like, that's kind of like babysitting. So what I'm trying to say is that I think in the old days, that's what most of the tour managers do. It's just to babysit. They rely on the city guide, and they don't do much. So that's the one experience that I'm like, okay, it's kind of like, this is not fun, you know, as a tour director, because you're just babysitting and holding the luggage. Like how she's attentive, how she does commentary. I mean, she took over from Egyptologists. While saying all the history, she will also comment and make a commentary. So I was like, ooh, I think I kind of like this. I want to know more what the behind of her preparations. So the more I go in our program, the more I'm so intrigued of how and what tour director do on the program. So that's why I'm here now. But I'm looking forward to, I mean, my knowledge of the side of the industry is basically already expand, and I really wanted to grow more. And one of the reasons I took this training is because one day I want to move to Europe. And if the company doesn't allow me to work remotely, I would like to be able to still travel and, you know, be able to mingle with people and kind of like tell them the histories and just show them around. Again, seniors are the best to travel with. They're very easy, they're fun. Anyway.
Good morning, everyone. In 2011, I decided to start the wine program at our community college, and my first class was Wines of the World. I walked into the room for this class, and there's an older gentleman hanging up pictures around the room, and my eye caught this one. And I said, oh, what's it? He goes, oh, it's one of the wineries we'll be talking about during this class. And I said, oh, great, this is wonderful. So on this is a 14-week class, and each week we try a different wine from a different region around the world. And on week 12, we finally talk about Chateau Margaux. And he pulls out a 1963 cab that's been in his wine collection all these years. This is almost 50 years later. And he opens this bottle, and he pours it in our glasses, and it smells amazing. And you're like, no way, this wine cannot be, and we taste. And it's like, wow, it just explodes in your mouth. You're thinking, that is just amazing. So every week I'm looking at this winery and I'm thinking, wow, what a neat place. Let's jump ahead 5 years. My son calls and says, Mom, he's living in Prague at the time. How would you like to do a wine tour, or a tour of 8 countries in Europe? And I'm like, okay, let's do it. He goes, I only have one condition, Mom. I want to go to Scotland and do the Highland tour. And I go, oh, well then I need to have my special. And I said, okay, well I want to do Italy, and I want to do a wine tour in Italy. He's like, okay. So we plan our whole trip. We go to England and Scotland and Portugal, and then we end up in Bordeaux. And so I booked a wine tour in the Margaux region, knowing that I cannot, these little vials of scents, and you have to guess what each scent is. And this is how we kill our time driving to the vineyard. So we get to the first vineyard, and we taste their wine, and they make an amazing peach Pinot Gris. That's just to die for. And it comes in this beautiful wooden box. And I said, can I ship that home? And they said, no, because when your U.S. Customs gets this box, they're going to tear it apart to make sure there's no drugs in it. I'm just like, wow, this is not happening. I said, okay, so I didn't buy any wine at that one. So then we go to the next vineyard. And I taste their wines, and they had one that I thought, yeah, this is okay. I kind of like this. And it's the same story. You cannot have the beautiful wooden box for your wine. So we're heading back into Bordeaux. We're sharing all these scents. I think I got maybe 4 of them correct as to what they smelled like. And I mean, we're talking some really interesting smells here. And the driver and I are just talking, and I had mentioned at the beginning of the drive about Chateau Margaux, and he turns down this road, and I look up, 8 other people on this tour with us. And he said, we just need to take a moment, folks. And I get out of that, and I just stand there, and I'm crying. And I turned around, and I did a selfie, and I'm like, I cannot believe I am seeing this. And I thought, wow, what a dream come true. And so at that moment I said, there's got to be a way for me to travel. And life got in the way, and here we are 7 years later. And I'm finally getting to take that step. And I'm so excited. Sorry. But this is my favorite travel story, and I'm hoping to make many, many more. Many, many more. So thank you so much.
Yay.